Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Trey Gowdy, and it's Sunday night in America. Change abounds on nearly every level. Government is changing. The economy will likely be different, especially trade. Foreign policy will most assuredly be different. Relations with friends and foes could be impacted by commerce and the threat of war. The border will definitely be different. Donald Trump promised a new golden age, and voters said yes, because Americans have long believed our country was headed in the wrong direction. And whether you call them cultural elites or coastal elites, their ideology was rejected by a wave of populism washing over the country. So how does that populism mix with the conservatism of yesteryear? In about a month, Donald Trump will take office with a robust agenda and a narrow majority. So what are realistic expectations? Where to start? How can he keep a party sometimes known for being famously fractious together? For answers, let's turn to a student of history, but a man firmly planted in the present, the host of the Hugh Hewitt Show, Mr. Hugh Hewitt. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us. I'm big on setting realistic expectations because it tends to tap down disappointment later on. What are realistic expectations given the narrow margins and the different constituencies within the GOP?
Well, Congressman, good evening. Happy New Year in advance to you. Let me say that I don't really have a lot of expectations beyond the first reconciliation and budget packet. Now, you're the alum of Congress. I've just been on the outside looking in. It's a very bizarre process. I couldn't explain it in an hour, nor could you in two, if we had all that time to explain it, but it's very bizarre. I think Donald Trump will get one big win this year. I hope it includes in it a wall on the border, like Stephen Miller's been talking about, an expanded ICE, an expanded Border Patrol. I would like very much to see a rebuild of the American military get underway, and I want those tax cuts extended and made permanent. Now, the Budget Control Act of 1974, which you probably know, you probably have memorized, Congressman, it's so complicated that it makes it very difficult to get what I just said done. But if they're going to get it done, and Donald Trump promised to get it done, they got to do it in January or February, I think.
Do we start with the border, or do we start with taxes, which are about to expire? And I'm sure most of our viewers, you are wondering, why can't you do both? I mean, why do you have to do one this year and one the next? So if you have to pick, would you start with the border or would you start with taxes?
If it was up to me, I would start with taxes for a very simple reason, Congressman. I'm a Republican, you're a Republican. We lose the Congress in 2026 if the economy's not cooking. And while I realize immigration was a huge issue, it was the second most important issue to Americans, the first most important issue was the economy and inflation. So I would lock in those tax cuts, let small businesses know what their effective rate's going to be, let them know what they get to write off on their CapEx expenditure, lock it all down, make sure they get their pass-throughs guaranteed. And the President-elect Trump wants to get rid of taxes on tips, doesn't want to tax Social Security benefits. Whatever they do, I would do it first so everyone could get booming again like we were right before COVID hit, back to the Trump boom 2.0. But I know, I think Stephen Miller is pretty close to the president, and all he ever talks about is the biggest border deal ever. And I assume that means the rest of the wall, a huge deportation of the million-plus people who've got deportation orders already on them, expansion of Border Patrol. So I think they're going to do the border first. I wish they would do taxes first, and I don't know why they can't do both first.
I'm sure a lot of our viewers are wondering that exact same thing. All right, let's move to the world stage. You got Eastern Europe, the Middle East with the fall of Syria, China. What is Hugh Hewitt going to be watching early on in 2025?
I'm going to be seeing if Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump resume the momentum they had at the end of the first Trump term, get the Abraham Accords stood up again, bring Saudi Arabia in, and finally begin to push at the paper-mache regime of Iran. And I believe that Israel has demonstrated through the destruction of Hezbollah in large, Hamas almost completely, the Houthis in significant part, that Iran really is a paper tiger. So that's number one. Do Netanyahu and Trump get things going at together? And then number two, what happens with the president's promise to get a special envoy into Ukraine? working on a ceasefire and some kind of a deal that might see some territorial swaps where the Russians retreat from Ukrainian territory, the Ukrainians retreat from Russian territory, and they stop killing each other. Finally, but this is a 4-year concern, Congressman Gowdy, is China. And they are continuing to threaten Taiwan on an almost monthly basis. Does Donald Trump sit down with Xi Jinping and say, let's knock this off and try and grow our own home economies for the benefit of our people? Don't know how successful he'll be. He'll be a lot more successful than Joe Biden, though.
All right, you and I both remember Ronald Reagan. That was one version of conservatism. Donald Trump has elements of the old GOP, but there's a dash of populism, both in personal appeal but also in policy. How would you describe the new Republican Party to someone who hasn't and doesn't study politics?
The new Republican Party is a combination of Barry Goldwater's party, Richard Nixon's party, Ronald Reagan's party, and he went and brought in a whole bunch of Democrats who were never part of the Republican Party ever. It's a much bigger accumulation of interest groups, but the same old elements of the Reagan coalition, the party of free enterprise and business, the party of faith, people for whom their faith is their number one deal. And then you've got the party of national security. Those three parties are still all there. The only thing that is really new is the countryside versus the capital stuff. A lot of Americans, when I was working for Reagan in the White House back in the 80s, Americans weren't really angry at Washington. They might have been upset with its inefficiency. Now they're just very, very angry with the almost impossible to overcome paralysis in the nation's capital. So he brought in that populist element. But I don't think it's that different, Trey Gowdy, do you? I mean, you weren't around in the 80s, but it seems to me like it's the same people on the same ramparts most of the time.
No, I think they both have built coalitions that the media did not think they would be capable of building, and I think they both fought through headwinds, different headwinds, but they both fought through headwinds. So there are similarities. There are a little more populism, I think, arguably in the new GOP. And we'll see if they pick taxes or border. How's that?
I hope that comes to pass. I look forward to it, Congressman. Happy New Year to you.
Yes, sir. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to you also. Thank you, Hugh.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.